The young man kicked over her bucket. Water spread across the marble lobby of Sentinel Tower, thin and bright under the chandeliers, and the woman in the gray uniform did not move. She was 46 years old. She had been mopping that floor for 11 days. Her name tag said A. Ellis. Her hands were steady. "There," he said, holding his phone up so the camera could see her. "Now you've got something to do. Say thank you." She looked at him for a long moment. "Son," she said quietly, "you have no idea what you just did." He laughed. 340,000 people would laugh with him before midnight. Here is what none of them knew. The woman kneeling in that water owned 61% of a company worth $6.5 billion. She had spent 9 years quietly buying the debt of the very tower she was standing in, and the man whose son had just kicked over her bucket had signed a piece of paper 9 years earlier that killed her boy. She had been waiting for this morning for 9 years. This is the story of Amara Ellis, and the day they picked the wrong woman. Amara Ellis had lived on Ridley Road for 22 years, in a narrow house the color of weak coffee, with a porch that sagged on the left side, and a screen door that announced every arrival and every departure with the same tired complaint. She never fixed the door. Andre had hung it the summer they moved in, sweating through his shirt, refusing help, cursing under his breath at a hinge that wouldn't sit true. He got it crooked. He knew he got it crooked. He stood back, wiped his forehead, and said, "It closes, don't it?" So she left it crooked, 22 years. Every time it slapped shut behind her, she heard him say it again. "It closes, don't it?" Andre Ellis had been a steel worker, then a foreman, then a man on a scaffold at the corner of 9th and Bell on a February morning, when a cable let go. Zuri was 11 months old. Elijah was 14. Amara buried her husband on a Tuesday and went back to work on a Thursday because the mortgage did not attend the funeral and did not send flowers. She raised the two of them alone after that. Elijah did the dishes without being asked. He walked his sister to the mailbox and back, and called it the long journey. He wanted to be an engineer, and he said it the way some boys say they want to be famous, like it was already decided, like the world had simply not been informed yet. He had sickle cell disease. He had it from the day he was born, and it had never once been the most interesting thing about him. He played basketball anyway. Number 12. His coach begged Amara to pull him off the roster, and Amara sat that coach down at her kitchen table and said, "You tell me one thing my son gets to have, and I'll take the rest away." The coach did not have an answer. Elijah stayed on the roster. He was 16 years old, and he was 6 feet of trouble and laughter and long division. And on the night of March 14th, 9 years ago, he woke his mother at 11 o'clock and said, "Mama, it's a bad one." She drove him to St. Marlowe Hospital with Zuri asleep against her shoulder, 3 years old, wrapped in a blanket with a bear on it. Amara remembers the streetlights. She remembers the way Elijah breathed through his teeth to keep from frightening his sister. They arrived at 11:40 p.m. The waiting room on the 3rd floor had gray plastic chairs bolted to a rail, 4 to a row, and a television bolted to the ceiling, playing a program nobody watched. Amara filled out the form. She wrote sickle cell crisis. She wrote it in capital letters, because she had learned over 16 years that capital letters made people read faster. The nurse at intake was a woman named Ruth Delacroix. She had a kind face and tired eyes, and 22 years on that floor. Amara asked for pain medication. Ruth looked at the chart, then she looked at the screen beside her, and something happened in her face, a small flinch, the kind you only catch if you are watching a person very closely, and Amara was watching her very closely. "There's a new protocol," Ruth said, "for his medication class. Your plan requires verification before we can administer." "Verification of what?" "Of the claim. It's automated. Ruth stopped. "It's new." "How long?" Ruth did not want to say it. Amara watched her not want to say it. "Usually about 4 hours." Elijah waited 6. He sat in the 3rd chair, left-hand row, with his head against the wall and his knees drawn up, and every 20 minutes he told his mother he was fine. Amara went to the desk 11 times. She went at midnight, and at 1:30, and at 1, and at 2, and she asked politely, And then she asked less politely. And at 3:20 a.m., she stood at that counter and said the sentence she would repeat to herself for the rest of her life. He is 16. He is not asking for anything but to stop hurting. Ma'am, I understand. It's the system. I can't override the system. And that was true. Ruth Delacroix could not override the system. That was the whole point of the system. At 5:50 in the morning, Elijah Ellis stopped breathing in a gray plastic chair in a hospital waiting room, with his mother's hand in his, and his 3-year-old sister awake now and watching from the seat beside him, and a television bolted to the ceiling playing a program nobody watched. The verification came through at 6:41 a.m. Approved. They called it Protocol 7. It was not a law. It was not a medical guideline. It was a cost containment measure, written by a health insurance company called Sentinel Health, and it did one thing. It inserted a mandatory verification step before certain pain medications could be administered to certain patients. Which patients? That was the part they did not put in the brochure. The protocol scored patients for what it called utilization risk. The score was built from 3 inputs. 1, the patient's billing history. 2, the patient's plan tier. 3, the patient's zip code. It did not ask the patient's race. It did not have to. In a country where money and geography have been sorted by color for 200 years, you can build a machine that never says the word and still gets the same answer every single time. Protocol 7 reduced Sentinel's payouts in the flagged categories by 31% in its first year. It was approved by a regional director, a man of 44 with a good suit and a better handshake, who initialed the bottom of page 9 and moved on to his next meeting. His name was Roland Brannigan. 9 years later, he would be the chief executive officer of Sentinel Health, with an office on the 40th floor of a glass tower downtown and a photograph of himself shaking hands with 2 governors on the wall behind his desk. He would not remember page 9. People assume grief is loud. It is not. Mostly. Mostly it is a woman who cannot make herself stand up. Amara Ellis spent 4 months on the floor of her son's bedroom. She lay on the rug with his basketball jersey folded under her head, number 12, still smelling faintly of him, and then, week by week, smelling of nothing at all, which was somehow the worse of the two. She did not shower. She did not cook. She lost 19 pounds and did not notice. And a 3-year-old girl named Zuri Ellis learned to climb onto a kitchen chair, and from the chair onto the counter, and from the counter to the bread on top of the refrigerator, because her mother had stopped, and someone in that house had to keep going. Zuri had not spoken since the hospital. Not one word. Not mama. Not no. Not hungry. The doctors ran every test there was. Her vocal cords were perfect. Her hearing was perfect. Her brain scans were perfect. Or selective mutism, they said. Trauma response. She'll speak when she's ready. She was not ready. Not that year. Not the next. In the 5th month, Amara found Zuri asleep on the kitchen floor, with a heel of bread in her fist, and something in her cracked open, and she got up. She got up because there was still a child in that house who needed her, and because on the night Elijah died, she had made him a promise with her mouth against his hair, and she was a woman who kept her promises even when it would have been kinder to herself to forget them. She had whispered, "I will not leave this place until no child ever dies here waiting." She went to see a lawyer, then a second, then a fourth. Every one of them told her the same thing, in different suits, in different words. "Ma'am, I'm sorry for your loss, but you cannot beat Sentinel Health. They have 40 attorneys. They have arbitration clauses. They have a mandatory dispute process that runs 3 to 5 years and costs more than your house. And the protocol will be defended as a legitimate business practice. You will spend your last dollar and you will lose." The fourth lawyer, a decent man who did not enjoy saying it, told her the truth as gently as he could. "They're not afraid of you." Amara Ellis went home and sat on her crooked porch until the streetlights came on. And then she did not sue. She did something else. Before Andre, before the children, before Ridley Road, Amara had spent 2 years studying biomedical engineering at the State University. She had been very good at it. She had been the kind of good where professors learn your name in the first week. She left in her 3rd year because her mother's kidneys failed and there was no one else to work. Those textbooks had been in a cardboard box in the garage for 24 years. She carried the box inside and set it on the kitchen table and opened it, and the smell of old paper came up at her like a door opening onto a hallway she had bricked up a long time ago. She started reading, nights after her shift. She got a job cleaning, because cleaning paid at night, and left her days for Zuri and her nights for the box. And here is the thing that Amara Ellis understood, that 1,000 consultants and 40 attorneys and 1 regional director had not understood. The bottleneck in an emergency room is not the doctor. It is the verification. It is the 20 minutes, the 4 hours, the 6 hours, in which a human being in pain becomes a claim to be adjudicated. And the reason verification exists is that the insurer does not trust the diagnosis. And the reason the insurer does not trust the diagnosis is that the diagnosis of pain, for 100 years, has depended on a patient's word. And some patients' words are believed, and some patients' words are not. And everyone in that building knows which is which, and nobody says it out loud. So take the word out of it. Build a device that measures the crisis, not the story, the blood. 80 seconds, a fingertip, a reading no adjuster can argue with. Make the objection impossible. Make the delay indefensible. Make the machine that no protocol can stand in front of. She built the first prototype in her garage over 2 years, with parts she bought second-hand, and a used centrifuge she drove 4 hours to Toledo to collect in the back of a Corolla with a door that didn't shut right. She named it Halcyon. 3 more years for certification. Trials, submissions, rejections, resubmissions, and 1 November, where she sat on the porch steps and understood, with total clarity, that she was going to fail, and then went inside and worked until 4 in the morning anyway. And then, in the 7th year, the thing broke open. By year 9, Halcyon Medical had devices in 900 hospitals in 31 countries. It was valued at $6.4 billion. Amara Ellis owned 61% of it. Ask anyone in the industry who runs Halcyon, and they will tell you Marcus Vane, chief executive. Good on television. Sharp suits, easy laugh. The sort of man who is very useful when what you need is for nobody to look behind him. The founder's name appeared exactly once in the corporate filings, in a line item that most analysts skimmed past. Founder, non-executive. Shares held in trust. The trust was called the Elijah Trust. There were no photographs. There were no interviews. 3 separate journalists tried, over the years, to find the reclusive founder of Halcyon Medical, and 3 separate journalists were politely, expensively, and completely stonewalled by Marcus Vane, who had been given exactly 1 standing instruction by the woman who signed his paychecks. Nobody finds me until I'm ready. Because she was not finished. Here is the part that people find hardest to believe. Every night, at 10 minutes to 11, a billionaire put on a gray uniform, clipped on a plastic badge that read, A. Ellis, and walked 11 minutes to St. Marlowe Hospital to clean the 3rd floor. She had done it for 9 years. She had turned down 3 offers of transfer and 2 promotions to shift supervisor. Her manager thought she was unambitious. Her manager thought she was, frankly, a little slow. She cleaned the whole floor, but there was one part of it she cleaned last, and by hand and alone. 3 square feet of linoleum in the emergency waiting room, in front of the 3rd chair, left-hand row. She knelt down. She wrung out the cloth. She washed that floor the way you wash a face. And then she stood up, and she picked up her bucket, and she went home to her daughter. 9 years. Every night. There is a word for that, and the word is not grief. Grief passes through you. This was something she had built a room for and moved into. Ruth Delacroix still worked the night shift at St. Marlowe. She was 58 now, charge nurse, with a bad hip and a photograph of 2 grandsons taped inside her locker door. She and the quiet cleaning woman on the 3rd floor had been friendly for 9 years. They shared a thermos of coffee at 3 in the morning when the floor was empty. Ruth talked about her grandsons. Amara listened. Ruth had never once connected the woman in the gray uniform with the mother from the chair. 9 years is a long time. Faces change. Grief changes them faster. And Amara had never told her. Understand that. She sat with that woman, night after night, for 9 years, and drank her coffee, and never told her. She was not being cruel. She had thought about it more than Ruth would ever know. But she had made a decision, early on, in the 4th month, on the floor of her son's bedroom, and the decision was this. The nurse did not build the machine. Ruth Delacroix had a screen in front of her, and a rule she could not override, and a supervisor who counted her overrides. She was a lever. Amara was not going to spend the rest of her life breaking levers. She was going to find the hand. Sentinel Health was dying. Nobody outside a very small number of offices knew it yet. For 6 years, the company had been covering its losses with convertible notes, debt that a lender can, under certain conditions, turn into ownership. It is a common instrument. It is also, if you are not careful, a loaded weapon that you have handed to a stranger and asked to please hold. Sentinel was not careful. Sentinel was desperate. And across 9 years, through 3 separate holding companies with 3 separate names and no visible connection to one another, someone had been buying those notes. Quietly, patiently, never enough at once to move a price or raise an eyebrow. In September of that year, Sentinel Health missed a debt covenant, a technical breach, buried on page 40 of a quarterly filing, the sort of thing that makes 2 analysts frown and then forget. That breach did one thing. It gave the note holders the right to convert, early, at will, whenever they chose. Marcus Vane called Amara at 6:15 that morning. "It's live," he said. "We can convert any time you want. 51.2% of voting shares. Amara, we can end this today." Amara Ellis stood in her kitchen in her bathrobe, holding a chipped mug, looking out the window at her daughter, who was sitting on the porch step in the gray light, writing in a notebook. "Not today," she said. "Why not?" "Because when I do it," she said, "I want to be looking at him." Chase Brannigan was 24 years old and had never held a job. He had 340,000 followers and a camera and a genre. He called it comedy. It was not comedy. It was a young man walking up to people who could not fight back and doing something to them and filming their faces while it happened. A security guard past retirement age, a woman waiting for a bus in the rain, a man asleep in a doorway. The rule of the genre, which he had learned in his first year and had never once broken, was this: pick someone who cannot answer. In September, his father gave him a title: Vice President of Brand Development, 12th floor, Sentinel Tower, a corner office with a view of the river and nothing whatsoever to do. And Halcyon Medical, in the same month, signed a facilities contract for that building, which meant a night cleaning crew. And Amara Ellis, who could have bought the tower with a phone call, put her name down for the evening rotation in the lobby. She wanted to see it. The building where page 9 was signed. She wanted to stand in it and feel what it felt like, because for 9 years she had only ever seen it from the outside. On her second evening there, Chase Brannigan came out of the elevator and saw a black woman in a gray uniform mopping the marble. And he took out his phone. The first thing he did was film her. He walked a slow circle around her, narrating, the way he always did. Building still hiring from the Stone Age, apparently. He got in close enough that she had to stop mopping and stand still, and he held the phone up under her chin and waited for a reaction. She gave him nothing. She waited until he was finished, and then she went back to mopping. That video did 200,000 views overnight. The comments said, "Do it again." The second thing he did was the bucket. It was a Thursday. She had just finished the west half of the lobby, and the marble was wet and shining. He walked past, hooked his shoe under the rim of the bucket, and put 6 gallons of gray water across her clean floor and across her shoes. "There," he said. "Now you've got something to do. Say thank you." She knelt down. She began to wring out the mop. "Son," she said quietly, "you have no idea what you just did. Don't call me son. You're not my mother." And Amara looked up at him then, and for a moment something crossed her face that he could not read and did not like, and he laughed to cover it, which is what people do. The third thing he did was the pin. She wore it every day, a small enamel basketball, number 12, on the collar of her uniform. It had been on Elijah's letter jacket. It was, along with a jersey and a shoebox and a promise, one of 4 things she had left of her son. Chase saw her touch it once, absently, while she was waiting for the elevator, and he understood immediately, the way cruelty always understands these things instantly, that it mattered. He took it off her collar on a Monday evening, pinched it right off, laughing, holding it up over her head like a boy in a schoolyard. "What is this? You play ball, Ellis? Give that back, please. Please." He turned to the camera. She said please, and then he dropped it into the trash receptacle by the security desk, pushed the flap shut with 2 fingers, and walked to the elevator. Amara Ellis stood very still for 11 seconds. Then she took off her gloves, and she opened that receptacle, and she went through it. Coffee cups, wet napkins, a half-eaten sandwich, with her bare hands, in front of the security guard, in front of the night receptionist, in front of the camera in the ceiling. She found it in the second bag. She cleaned it in the ladies' room with warm water and a paper towel, and she dried it on the hem of her shirt, and she pinned it back on her collar. And she went back to work. The security guard saw it. His name was Alonzo. He had 4 months to go before his pension vested, and a daughter in her 2nd year of college, and he stood at his desk with his hands flat on the counter, and did not move, and hated himself for not moving, and did not move. The night receptionist saw it. She wrote an email to Human Resources. She did not send it. She saved it in her drafts, where it stayed. 2 of the cleaning crew saw it. They told Amara she should file a complaint. "There's a process," one of them said. "There's a process," Amara agreed. She did not file. She knew exactly how far a complaint against a Brannigan travels inside a Brannigan building, and so did everybody else in that lobby, and that shared knowledge is the reason nobody moved. It is easy to judge them. I would ask you to be careful about it. Everyone in that lobby had done the arithmetic, and the arithmetic said, "He is the son of the man who signs my check, and she is the woman with the mop." And so they did nothing, and they went home, and they did not sleep well, and in the morning they went back and did nothing again. That arithmetic left one woman standing alone on a marble floor. Zuri Ellis was 12 years old. She had not spoken since she was 3, 9 years. She was a quiet, watchful, extraordinarily gentle child who read at a college level and could not order her own lunch. She communicated with her mother in a private sign system the 2 of them had built over a decade, and with the world through a small spiral notebook she kept in her coat. Not the same notebook. The current one was her 4th. She had started writing letters to her brother when she was 9, the first year she could write well enough to keep up with her own thoughts, and she had written to him nearly every day since. 3 years of letters, 311 pages. Amara had never read a single one. She had decided that early and held to it. That is between her and him. I am not invited. On the 2nd Friday in October, Zuri's school closed for a Teacher Institute Day, and Amara's shift could not be moved. And so a 12-year-old girl in a blue coat came to Sentinel Tower and sat in a chair in the lobby with her notebook in her lap, while her mother mopped the marble. Amara told her, "Sit right there, don't move. I can see you the whole time." Chase Brannigan came out of the elevator at 6:40 p.m. He started the live stream before he crossed the lobby. 19,000 people were watching within 4 minutes. "Okay, so, update on the cleaning lady saga," he said, walking. "She's brought her kid to work. This building is now a daycare. I don't make the news, folks. I just report it." Zuri looked up. She saw him coming. She did what she always did, which was to become very still and very small. Amara was 40 feet away, at the far end of the lobby, with a floor buffer running. Chase stopped in front of the girl. Hey, what's your name?" Zuri did not answer. "I said, what's your name?" He crouched down, holding the phone between them. "She's ignoring me. Are you seeing this?" Zuri hugged the notebook against her chest, and Chase Brannigan reached out and took it. He stood up with it, flipping pages, and his face changed, not to shame, but to delight. because he had found something better than a reaction. He had found a wound. "Oh, it's a diary." He turned to the camera. "Chat, it's a diary." Zuri stood up and reached for it. She made a sound, the first sound she had made in front of another human being in years. A small, wordless, desperate sound. "Whoa," Chase said. "Okay, so she can't talk? Is she?" And he laughed, and he read out loud, in a high voice, in a mocking voice, into a live stream, watched by 19,000 people. "Dear Elijah, today I still couldn't say it. I'm sorry, I'll try again tomorrow." He lowered the phone and looked at the girl, and delivered the line he had been building toward, the line he thought was the joke. "Who's Elijah? Is he not talking to you either?" And then, because the moment was ending and he needed it to keep going, he tore the notebook in half. He tore it in half, and then he tore the halves, and he dropped 311 pages onto a wet marble floor. The buffer went silent. Zuri Ellis went down on her knees in the water. She began gathering the pages, the ink already blooming and running, pressing them against the front of her blue coat, her mouth open, no sound coming out at all. And Amara Ellis crossed that lobby. She did not run. Understand this, she walked, at an ordinary pace, and every single person in that room turned to watch her do it, and the silence went ahead of her like weather. She stopped 6 feet from Chase Brannigan. She looked at her daughter on the floor. She looked at the ruined pages. She looked at the young man with the phone, who was, for the first time, not entirely certain what came next. And then Amara Ellis reached into the pocket of her gray uniform and took out an old phone with a cracked screen, and she pressed one button, and she held it to her ear, and she said, in the flat, ordinary voice of a woman ordering groceries, "Marcus, convert. All of it. Tonight." A pause. "Amara, you understand what that does. We come out of the dark. Everybody sees you. Convert it. Are you sure?" "I'm sure." She ended the call. She put the phone back in her pocket. Then she knelt down in the water beside her daughter, in her gray uniform, with the number 12 on her collar, and she began picking up the pages, one by one, and she said, loud enough for a live stream of 19,000 people to hear it, clear as a bell in that marble room. "Pick them up, baby. Every one. Mama's going to buy back every word." The board of directors of Sentinel Health met on Monday morning at 8 o'clock, in a glass room on the 40th floor with a view of the river. Roland Brannigan came in at 7:58, blue tie, gold cufflinks, the walk of a man who had won for 40 consecutive years and had no working model for anything else. His son sat at the end of the table, still half amused, still convinced the video was a public relations problem and not a fact. The chairman called the meeting to order. "Before we begin," he said, and his voice was strange, and Roland looked up. "We have a shareholder who has requested the floor. Overnight, a note holder exercised a conversion right, triggered by the Q3 covenant breach. As of 6:41 this morning, that party holds 51.2% of voting shares." Roland Brannigan laughed. It was not a nervous laugh. It was the laugh of a man being told a joke. 51? By whom? Halcyon? Let them come in then. Let's meet our new partner. The door opened. A woman walked in. She was not wearing a gray uniform. She was wearing a black suit, and her hair was pinned back, and she carried a single folder, and on her lapel, where a corporate pin would go, was a small enamel basketball with the number 12 on it. Roland Brannigan had never seen her before in his life. To him she was, and had always been, a line in a spreadsheet. But Chase Brannigan knew her instantly, and every drop of blood left his face. "That's," he said, "Dad, that's the cleaning lady." "My name is Amara Ellis," she said. "I founded Halcyon Medical. I control the Elijah Trust, and as of 2 hours ago, I am the controlling shareholder of Sentinel Health." Nobody at that table moved. She set the folder down and opened it. "Mr. Brannigan, on March 14th, 9 years ago, you signed the final approval of an internal cost containment measure designated Protocol 7. You initialed the bottom of page 9 at 11:02 in the morning." She slid a photocopy across the table. 38 minutes after midnight that same night, My son entered an emergency room and was flagged by that protocol. She slid a second page. He waited 6 hours. He was 16 years old. His name was Elijah Ellis. He died in the third chair, left-hand row, third floor emergency waiting room, St. Marlowe Hospital, at 5:50 in the morning. She looked up. His verification cleared at 6:41, 41 minutes late. Approved. The chairman put a hand over his mouth. For 9 years, Amara said, I have cleaned that floor. Every night. 3 square feet in front of that chair. By hand. You did not know that. Nobody knew that. I am telling you now, so that you understand exactly how long I have been standing outside this room. Roland Brannigan found his voice, and it came out dry. That protocol was approved by a committee. It was reviewed by council. It was a legitimate utilization management tool, and it was legal. And you cannot lay a boy's death at my feet, because a system had a queue. You're right, Amara said. You didn't sign it alone. She turned a page. But you're the only one who wrote this. And she read it out loud, in the same flat, ordinary voice, in that glass room, with the river shining behind her. Projected reduction in the flagged category, 31%. Note that very few of these members retain counsel. She set the paper down. You wrote that, in an internal message, 12 years ago. Roland Brannigan's mouth opened and closed. That message is not in the record, he said. That message does not exist. It does, said Amara, because you sent it to your wife. The door opened a second time. A woman of 61 came in, with silver hair and a plain coat, and a manila envelope held against her chest with both arms, the way you hold something you have been carrying for a very long time. Beside her walked a small, sharp-eyed woman in her late 60s with a reporter's notebook and 41 years of healthcare journalism behind her. Her name was June Whitaker. Chase Brannigan stood up so fast his chair went over backwards. Mom? Eleanor Brannigan had left that house 12 years earlier. She had left it because she had found a printed page on her husband's desk and read it and could not put it down and could not unread it. She had taken it to 2 newsrooms and a law office and a state regulator, and she had been listened to, politely, and shown the door 3 times, and every time she got home her husband already knew where she had been. Roland had made 4 phone calls. He was always good at 4 phone calls. She was described, in a custody filing, as emotionally unstable and prone to fixation. There was a psychiatric evaluation, arranged by his attorney, conducted by his friend. There was a settlement she signed at the lowest hour of her life, and one of its clauses said she would not contact her son. She kept the page. 12 years, in a manila envelope, in a hall closet in a rented apartment 900 miles away. June Whitaker had found her in 4 days. Amara Ellis had been looking for her for 6 years. Eleanor set the envelope on the glass table. She did not look at her husband. She looked at her son. I never left you, Chase, she said. I was removed from you. Chase's face was doing something terrible. He was 24 years old and he was falling apart in front of 11 board members. He said you didn't want me. He said, for 12 years, he said. I know what he said. Eleanor's voice did not shake. I've heard it. I've heard it coming out of your mouth in every video you ever made. Amara Ellis looked at Chase Brannigan. 24 years old, on his feet, shaking, in a suit his father bought him, in a job his father invented for him, having just discovered in front of a board of directors that the entire architecture of his life was a lie built by the man sitting 8 feet away. She had the power, in that room, at that moment, to end him. Completely. One signature. She held the majority. She could have put him in front of every camera in the state and let the country do the rest, and the country would have done it gladly, because the country had been waiting for a villain and he had spent 4 years auditioning. She thought about Elijah in the third chair. She thought about Zuri on her knees in the water. And then she thought about a boy of 12, being told that his mother left because she did not love him. She did not destroy him. Not because he deserved mercy. Let us be clear about that. He did not deserve mercy, and Amara Ellis was not feeling merciful, and she would tell you so herself. She did not destroy him because she had spent 9 years building something. and it was not a weapon. "Mr. Chairman," she said, "I move to a vote. 1. The immediate removal of Roland Brannigan from all offices and from this board, and the referral of the complete Protocol 7 file, every draft, every projection, every internal message, to the Office of the State Attorney General. 2. The permanent dissolution of the pre-authorization unit. Not a review, not a reform. Dissolution. Sentinel Health will never again place a verification queue between a patient in crisis and a physician's judgment, in any state, in any plan, for any reason. 3. 40% of this company's net profit this fiscal year will be placed into a restitution fund for families denied or delayed under Protocol 7. She closed the folder. There are 1,114 of them. I have the list. I have had the list for 7 years, and I have written to every one of those families, and 190 of them wrote back to me, and I have kept every letter. The chairman called the vote. It carried, unanimously, but one. Roland Brannigan was escorted out of Sentinel Tower at 10:15 that morning by the head of building security, the same man who, 12 years before, had walked Eleanor Brannigan out of that same lobby with a hand on her elbow and his eyes on the floor. He remembered. You could see that he remembered. He held the door for her this time. It came fast after that, the way these things do once the first stone moves. The Attorney General's office opened a criminal investigation on Tuesday. By Thursday, they had the drafts, the projections, the modeling documents, and the internal message that Roland Brannigan had sent to his wife, in a moment when he believed himself entirely safe. He was indicted 6 weeks later on charges of insurance fraud, falsification of business records, and obstruction, that last one for a set of complaints, filed by other families over other children, that had gone into a drawer and never come out. He held no press conference. There was no flag pin and no podium. His attorney issued 2 sentences to the press and stopped answering the phone. Chase Brannigan was charged separately: harassment, criminal mischief, and endangerment of a minor. His platform removed his account permanently. His 340,000 followers went and found somebody else to watch. The internet forgot him within a month. The internet forgets everyone it does not need, but it did not forget the girl in the blue coat. That live stream, 19,000 people live, and then 61 million within a week, did not end up being a video about a young man being cruel. It ended up being a video about a mother crossing a marble floor. They watched her walk. They watched her make one phone call. They watched her kneel down in the water in her gray uniform. Zuri's notebook was the top trend in 11 countries by Sunday. Amara Ellis did not give a single interview. She went home that night. She sat down on the living room floor with her daughter, with a roll of clear tape and a shoebox full of wet paper, and the two of them began putting it back together. 311 pages. It took 4 nights. Some of the pages were beyond saving. The ink had run into gray clouds and taken the words with it. Zuri would hold one up and look at her mother, and shake her head, and set it aside, and Amara would say, "That's all right. That one's still yours. Nobody took it. It's just quiet now." On the 4th night, at the very bottom of the box, they came to the last page, the most recent one, written the morning of the day it was torn. And Zuri Ellis picked it up and held it for a long moment, and then she pushed it across the rug to her mother. Amara looked at her. "Baby, I don't read those." Zuri nodded once and pushed it closer. "Read it." So she did. "Dear Elijah, Mama thinks I can't talk. That's not it. I can talk. I've been able to the whole time. I'm scared that if I open my mouth, the first thing that comes out will be your name, and you won't answer, and then I'll know for certain, and I don't think I can hold that yet. So I'm not ready. Please don't be angry with me. Give me a little more time." Amara Ellis, who had not cried out loud in 9 years, not at the funeral, not in the 4 months on the floor, not in a garage at 4 in the morning, not once, not ever, folded that page in half and put her face in her hands and wept until she could not breathe. And a 12-year-old girl put her arms around her mother's shoulders and did not say a word and did not need to. Ruth Delacroix came to the house on Ridley Road on a Saturday in November. She stood on the crooked porch with her purse held in front of her with both hands, a 58-year-old woman who had not slept properly in 9 days, since the morning her granddaughter showed her a video and said, "Grandma, isn't that the lady from your floor?" Amara opened the screen door. It slapped shut behind her. "It closes, don't it?" "You knew," Ruth said. "All this time, 9 years of coffee. You knew who I was." "I knew. Why didn't you say something?" Amara looked at her for a long moment. "Because you cried," she said. Ruth's face broke. "At the desk," Amara said. "That night, at 3:20 in the morning, when I told you he was 16. You turned around and you thought I couldn't see you, and you cried, and then you went back to the screen, because that was all they left you." She stepped aside and held the door. "You didn't build it, Ruth. You were standing in front of it. There's a difference, and I have had 9 years to think about that difference, and I am the only person in the world who gets to decide what I do with it." Ruth Delacroix came inside. She sat in that kitchen, and she told Amara Ellis everything she had never been allowed to say, that she had overridden the protocol 3 times in the first month and been written up 3 times, that her supervisor had told her a 4th would cost her the job, that she had 2 grandsons and no husband and 11 years to her pension, that she had thought about that boy every single night for 9 years. They talked until the light went blue in the windows. And when Ruth left, she left something on the table, a folder, thin, gone soft at the corners from being carried. Incident reports, her own, 9 years of them, written and filed and buried, every time the queue delayed a patient on her floor. 41 of them. She had kept copies. She had never known why. The Attorney General's office knew why. Those 41 pages turned a civil matter into a criminal one. They tore out the waiting room on the 3rd floor of St. Marlowe Hospital in March, on the anniversary, though nobody planned it that way, and nobody remarked on it. The gray plastic chairs came out on a Tuesday. Amara Ellis stood and watched them carry the 3rd one, left-hand row, out through the double doors. In its place, they built something else. It opened in June. The Elijah Ellis Community Clinic. 24 hours, no insurance question at the door, no verification queue, 16 exam rooms, a full crisis response protocol for sickle cell patients, and, screwed into the wall by the entrance, in plain brass, "No one waits here. Ruth Delacroix is the head nurse." It was not a gift. She interviewed for it, and she was the best candidate by a distance, and she still has the bad hip and the photograph in her locker. The funding is permanent, drawn from the restitution fund and structured so that no future board of Sentinel Health, under any name, can vote it away. Amara Ellis checked that clause herself, 3 times. Chase Brannigan was sentenced to 400 hours of community service. He asked, through his lawyer, and then, when that failed, in a letter he wrote himself, badly, 4 times, to serve them at the clinic. The board said no. Amara Ellis said yes. She said it in a 2-line email that nobody has ever seen, and she has never explained herself to anyone, and if you ask her about it, she will change the subject. So on Saturday mornings, a young man comes in at 6 in a plain shirt, and he mops the 3rd floor. He does the whole floor, and then he does 3 square feet by hand, by the entrance, where a chair used to be, because a woman told him once, at the beginning, in the doorway, without any warmth in her voice at all, "You can start there." Amara Ellis does not speak to him. In 400 hours she has said perhaps 40 words to him, and none of them were kind, and none of them were cruel. But she has not sent him away. His mother comes and sits in the car in the parking lot and waits for him, every Saturday, and they get breakfast afterward. They are learning each other from the beginning. It is going slowly. 12 years is a great deal to put back together, and some of the pages are gone for good, and they both know it. There are debts that money cannot settle. There are only the Saturdays. On the day they opened the clinic, Amara Ellis stood in front of a camera for the first time in her life. 40 reporters, 2 networks, June Whitaker in the 2nd row with her notebook. She wore the gray uniform, pressed, clean, the plastic badge clipped to the pocket, A. Ellis. Somebody asked her why. She thought about it for a while. She has never been a woman who hurries an answer. Because I want my daughter to see, she said, that the woman in this uniform can bring down an empire. And because there is no such thing as a small job, there are only small men looking down. She picked up the scissors. The ribbon was blue. She cut it, and the room applauded, and the flashbulbs went. And in the noise of all of that, in the middle of it, from somewhere just behind her left shoulder, there came a voice. Small, cracked, rusted through from 9 years of disuse, barely more than a breath. Mama. The applause did not stop, because most of them did not hear it. Amara Ellis heard it. She turned around very slowly, the way you turn when you are afraid the thing behind you will not be there. Zuri Ellis was standing in a blue coat with a taped-together notebook held against her chest, and she was looking at her mother, and her chin was going, and her eyes were enormous. Mama, she said again. And Amara Ellis went down on her knees in the middle of the lobby of the Elijah Ellis Community Clinic, in a gray cleaning uniform, in front of 40 reporters and 2 networks, and she pulled her daughter into her arms and held the back of her head with one hand, the way you hold a newborn. The room went quiet, all at once, the way a room does when it understands. June Whitaker, 68 years old, 41 years a reporter, did not write anything down. She told me later that she simply could not see the page. Above them, screwed into the brass, 4 words caught the morning light coming through the east windows. No one waits here. I want to be honest with you, because I think you have earned it and because she would want me to be. It is not a fairy tale. Elijah Ellis is still gone. There is no board vote, no indictment, no clinic, no brass plaque, and no $1 billion that brings a 16-year-old boy back through a screen door on a summer evening to ask what's for dinner. Amara Ellis won everything there was to win, and she would trade every last piece of it, in a heartbeat, without 1 second of thought, for 1 more hour in a kitchen with her son. She knows that. She says it plainly. She told June Whitaker, in the only long interview she has ever given. People keep using the word justice. I don't know that I'd use it. Justice would be him being here. This isn't justice. This is just the next best thing I could build with what I had left. Zuri speaks now, not fluently, not always, not on hard days. Some mornings the words are simply not there, and she takes the notebook out of her coat, and that is fine, and her mother waits. The letters continue. She still writes to her brother. She always will. Ruth Delacroix works nights. Alonzo, the security guard, testified before the grand jury and lost his job that same month, and was hired by the clinic 2 weeks later at a better wage, and he will tell anyone who asks that he does not deserve it, and he has decided to be worth it instead. The screen door on Ridley Road is still crooked, and every night, at 10 minutes to 11, out of 9 years of pure habit, Amara Ellis still finds herself standing in her kitchen at that hour, with her keys in her hand, before she remembers that she does not have to go. Some nights she goes anyway. She lets herself in the side door, and she takes a cloth, and she kneels down by the entrance of a clinic that bears her son's name, and she washes 3 square feet of floor where a gray plastic chair used to be. Not because it is dirty, because she promised him, and because she is a woman who keeps her promises, even when it would be kinder to herself to forget them. They looked at a black woman in a gray uniform holding a mop, and they decided they knew the entire contents of her life. They were wrong by $6.5 billion, by 9 years, by 1 dead son, 1 silent daughter, and 1 promise whispered into a boy's hair at 10 minutes to 6 in the morning. Be careful who you look down on. You are almost never looking at the whole person. You are looking at the part of them that is currently visible, and every single soul you will pass today is carrying something you cannot see from where you are standing.